Welcome to What Are You Sporting About podcast, a podcast about business, employment, sports, and entertainment to help educate, support, and guide you to your next level. Here's your host, attorney Savania DeBarros.
Hi, this is Savania DeBarros here, the protector of athletes, and today I have Coach Isaiah Pace on the line. What's going on, Coach?
Hey, how you doing? Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for being here. It's a pleasure to have you today. So why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about who you are?
Well, I coach men's basketball on the collegiate level. I started out as a volunteer assistant at Daytona State College, and then transitioned there from working with the Orlando Magic in their youth sports sector in various capacities as a youth basketball coach and a league director of the Junior Magic, also affiliated with the I think the Junior NBA. If we saw, of course, I think it was last summer, there were a lot of Junior NBA games on ESPN and stuff like that. And then transition working in the high school and then going to college, Division III, NCAA, and also the NAIA level.
Nice. And you have a passion too for helping African Americans to get in the space of sports administrative or athletic director positions, right?
Yes, certainly. I mean, have a passion for that because, you know, in the most popular sports in America, football or basketball, African Americans are predominantly the majority of athletes and numbers represented in those sports. And to have a minority of African American coaches that of course will be able to relate better to African American student athletes is definitely something that we're trying to fix as a country now, and and just everybody just fixing their own backyard.
That makes a lot of sense because representation is so important. You have a little African-American girl or boy coming up in school, and if there's not many people around or many people in administrative positions who look like them, I think there can be a lot of lost in translation type communications on how you really course correct certain issues with that child, or how you interact with them will be completely different because you really don't know the child because you didn't come from their community. So that's a great way to start trying to fix, like you said, your own backyard, is putting people who represent also the community of those athletes so that they can get the best support, not just in that sport, but also outside of the sport.
Yeah, there are, a lot of layers to it. That's the beginning of it. But of course, with the social injustices that we see every day in the news or in the NBA now, as far as how they, support Black Lives Matter initiatives and things like that, there's a lot that that is, maybe white America is responsible for or are not knowledgeable about, or, as far as other points of views from minorities. But there are also a lot of things that we're responsible for in our community as Blacks, as far as things that we can do or not, or things that we're not doing that can help put more African Americans in these particular roles.
I agree. But right now, and I don't know if this is completely right, but it appears that putting African Americans in those roles is something that absolutely must be done. But do we have enough people who are currently occupying those spaces to actually reach back and lift up other African Americans to put them in that role?
So that's a great question. And of course you would think like, oh, well, no, we're also, we're disproportionate or whatever. But the thing that I found out after researching, for a few years is that we actually do have enough Blacks already in seats of power or seats of influence that can help. But a lot of times what you get is someone African American gets a position, and then they're tunnel vision on their position, and they're not, there's a saying, too much is given, much is required. They do their job and do a great job with that, but they're not looking back to try to extend a hand to pick someone else up, and they may do that, sparingly, but it needs to be actively done. And so I think that another thing you have is that, okay, you have people who may, do, that in a certain space, and people who don't. So therefore, a movement is when a group of people come together and do the same thing. So there's no movement because everybody's not doing it. And so I feel like, that we have the people in place. I just feel like a lot of people are not really focused on that, who are African Americans. They don't feel like it's their duty. Okay, I got here on my own merit. I had to struggle, whatever. So then, hey, you got to do the same thing. And it's like, that's not what, in other communities, other ethnicities, that's not how it works. They know somebody. They, recently Steve Nash just got hired as his first coaching job for the Brooklyn Nets on a championship contender team. So that those opportunities don't happen for African Americans, as far as that luxurious, as far as you get to coach a championship contender team, all because he knew somebody. And they didn't ask him for his resume. They didn't ask him, hey, what are your X's and O's? Even though he played, they just said, hey, let me bring you aboard. So it should be the same thing. You would think it should be the same thing with us, Blacks, African Americans as well. But evidently it's not the same thing for whatever reason.
And it's sad because it used to be. So, to get deep into that conversation would take us off on a whole side combo about why we are where we are now. But, the African American community did at some point have that village aspect, in a very broad sense as well, too. So aside from that, what other disconnects do you think are there that we need to overcome that will help and allow us to put or create more opportunities for Black people to work in college athletics or pro sports? Because you're right, there are some people who don't feel like they need to carry the entire community on their shoulders, but unfortunately, sometimes that's just the reality of it all. We are still representing the first people to be in certain positions, or the first one in our families to do a certain thing. So in a way, other folks in the community do kind of look up to you. And sometimes you do kind of, carry the rest of the community on your shoulders. So, how can we take that so that it's not too overbearing for the person that now finds themselves on a great platform where they can maximize that opportunity to then reach forward, to reach back, and to create those opportunities for African Americans in those positions?
I would say first, making yourself accessible. Like, meaning, okay, as administrators or people in athletics or coaches, we get a lot of emails from different people. Like, take the time to read those emails and do it as a sense of responsibility, for your position that you got. So, instead of like not reading or not answering, okay, let me, some African American emailed me today. Okay, I see that they're looking for a position. I don't have anything or I know anything right now, but let me put their name in a Rolodex or put it somewhere to where, okay, if something opens or whatever, I can look at that list of names and write down and see what they do and see, okay, let me look at their resume. Because a lot of times, of course, in today's world, you hear the word, okay, make sure the resume is good, references. But in today's world, not a lot of people actually read a lot of these, references or resumes. Most of it's kind of like scanned by a computer system or whatever, looking for keywords. Mm-hmm. So, of course, we're in the technology era, so it's a little bit different. So, just number one, create a Rolodex. I think I said being accessible, and being able to, I would say, have the integrity to follow up, and then, follow up in a timely manner. Because, of course, we all have a million things going on in our careers and things like that. But, if you said you were going to write something for somebody, a recommendation, or you said you were going to, help, put in a word for somebody or whatever, make sure that you follow up and you do those things, because in today's world, if a job is posted, it's already gone. So time is of essence when these positions are open. So there may be, a lot of Black candidates who are applying but never get these opportunities just because they were a second late or this happened or that happened. So that, and then just, let's say lastly, just being able to network out of your bubble. Everybody has a bubble in a certain, group of people who they pretty much vibe with, or they, have, conversation or social time with or whatever. But I think that was, one of the biggest things that I've heard in our communities of, as far as, with the social injustices and racial kind of barrier, is that we don't spend a lot of time in in other groups, in other communities all the time. We stay in our bubble. So it's the same thing as far as in our community. Every Black person is not the same. Every Black person is not, a criminal, a murderer.
Right.
There's some people who are successful, some people who are business minded, who are entrepreneurs. So there's different classes of that. So I think we have to do that as well in our own community, is to, there may be different sectors of professional African Americans, like get to know those different people.
Yep.
So that's just my personality in general. I'm a networker. So I know tons of people and tons of different whatever. And I'm very alert and aware of everything that's going on.
Yeah.
I have my own life going on, things going whatever, but I'm very alert of who's doing what. I keep my ear to the floor. So that's just, I know everybody's different, but I think that kind of comes with, it's just like you get a new job, right? On your job, one of the things that you have to do is you have to be on time. So that's one of the things that, that's one of the responsibilities that you have with your position. So as a position of a African American, you have to, okay, let me be attentive. Let me, know what's going on. Let me follow up. Let me do all these different things. So yeah, that's what I think about that.
That's true. I really like what you said about, really being accessible, and I would add open and approachable, because sometimes I think people can get in certain positions and it just really creates this arrogant personality with some folks, which then kind of shuts them off from the community, which is a horrible thing to happen, because sometimes you may not realize the one person that you're shutting off may actually be your key person, your key answer to whatever problem or solution you may want to solve in the future. Which then means if you have created now a bad image, first impression with this person who you felt was technically a nobody, that may come back to bite you, because the world of sports is so ever changing and so, evolves so much and so fast that people move from one position to the next, one state to the other. You never know who's going to be where and do what. So I would definitely say just try to be approachable for sure.
And I'll add another thing too, because there's this misconception that diversity in athletics or administrations or whatever, or coaching, has to start at the top. So I'll give you an example. On LinkedIn, you see a lot of people who maybe were assistant athletic directors and they became an AD. They're Black. And then we celebrate that, which we should. That's a great accomplishment. And we're like, oh, great, that's diversifying. And it's really not, because if you think about it, it's like if a Black person gets promoted and they go to another position and there's not another African American or Black person or minority that fills their position, then you were still in the same boat as far as the numbers are concerned. I think it was like, I don't want to misquote this, but I think it was a low number of administrators and coaches in college athletics. I think it was like either under 10 or 15%, which is very, very low.
Wow.
Yes. Yeah. So it's like we're celebrating these accomplishments, but true diversity, true diversity happens like this. What happens is you need to have more new hires of more entry-level positions who are candidates that reflect the African American community or minority communities, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then when you start them up from the bottom, they pretty much infiltrate the middle, and then they
Right.
go up to the top. And then when you already have the people who are almost to the top, if they move up, you still have people coming in under them.
Right.
That's how you diversify. You don't diversify at the top.
At the top.
That's not diversifying.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So
that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, so I've heard a lot of podcasts and I've heard a lot of forums on, Zoom forums where they had roundtable discussions and talked about diversity and how to do it or whatever. And it's really simple. Like, you just start from the bottom. These entry level positions could be graduate assistants, could be interns, it could be assistant coaches, it could be director of basketball operations, it could be assistant student academic director. Those are entry level positions. When you build up those positions, then those people are in place to be in front of other people, whether it be white people, other people who are different ethnicities, to gain favor and to gain familiarity to move up.
Right.
So that's how that's done.
That is amazing. I never even thought about it in that way, from the bottom up. I just kind of always thought about it as kind of like, not in the methodology way that you put it, but in a more blanket way of just putting people in positions to create more diversification. But it does make sense because not everybody would even qualify for positions in the middle or positions at the top. So you have to start them somewhere to create that really authentic, true diversification. And where do we do that? Where do we put more people who may want to work in college athletics or pro sports, where they're going to have to start at the bottom to even gain the experience and the recognition that they may, crave, and then they move up. So that makes just so much more sense. I want to talk though about social justice. So this is something that is near and dear to my heart, and I'm currently in the middle of working on a project around this. But I mean, for years, we've seen top athletes, let's just say Muhammad Ali, for example, using their platform and what they have to speak out against injustice and racism, discrimination. Muhammad Ali was actually one of those athletes that lost a lot for refusing to go into an army that he didn't believe in, that was against his religion, speaking out against social injustice and a host of other issues. We're seeing the same thing happen again. And now I think with COVID-19, with the pandemic, the whole world shut down like for a good 2-3 months straight, where no one was really going anywhere, doing anything. So do you think that the recent protests around these particular issues, do you think that they've impacted sports in a way? Do you think it will continue to impact sports? Like, what's your thoughts on that?
Well, I think that at a first glance, I've never seen so many sports leagues or organizations, say just simply vote, whether that be NFL, NBA, or, NHL or things like that. I've never seen so many people, of different ethnicities say that, hey, Black Lives Matter, not in a political way, as people try to, make it like, oh, it's an organization, but just simply the phrase of, of humanity. So I think that the protests, whether that be from NBA players who participated, and now, of course, there's talks of, NFL players going to be kneeling and things like that, and people being okay with it, versus when all of it first started in 2016, I believe, with Colin Kaepernick, it was railroaded and it was made to believe that, okay, that he was being disrespectful,
right,
towards the flag or the troops or whatnot, when there was an actual troop who actually gave him that advice to kneel after he was just sitting before. So they, tried to change the narrative. So I think that these protests have been very, very impactful because I feel like people are starting to get it. Yes, you're not going to change everybody's perspective because it's a heart issue. Humanity and equal rights for all of humanity is a heart issue. As far as with each individual. But I feel like, it's definitely changed a lot since when it started.
Yeah, I think so too. And I also think, that I'm the kind of person that I believe what I believe in strongly. And social justice is something that impacts the African American community, which I am a part of, and I will 100%, no matter what platform I'm on, speak about what's right and what's wrong. So I do also believe that it has impacted sports, because you can't. I just feel like there's an injustice in itself to think that athletes who represent the community, who are majority of the time the subjects of the injustices that occur in this country, for them not to speak out about it. That's like wishful thinking to me. And then to, like you say, change the narrative and make it seem as though, now these sports teams or organizations are political organizations. Is not. These individuals make up a larger community as private citizens who can speak up and out and against things that impact them, that probably has impacted them, but also impact their communities. Just because they're now playing for a team doesn't mean that their family members aren't still impacted. It doesn't mean that when they go and take off that jersey that they're not going to be profiled on the street somewhere.
Exactly.
So it's definitely an issue. I'm actually happy that there was basically this perfect storm to happen to get the world's attention,
Oh yeah, I definitely agree. It was a perfect storm. To, like I said, so many of us. I'm guilty of it too. We all spend time with people in our circle. We don't branch out, and there's always, like, okay, well, of course, we all have to get our bag or whatever and things like that. But there's more of like a selfish approach in a sense to where, we want to turn a blind eye to people and to things and and stuff like that. And I think it's just been built over time, and I think that sometimes or somewhere in our community we was like, oh, this is not going to change, so instead of helping each other, let me just help myself and just kind of like shut off everything. So I think it's just been a perfect storm for our world to heal. And in so many ways, racially, as far as, with family dynamics, relationships, and a lot of people are discovering what's more important in today's society.
That's true. And I really hope that for everything that you're working on, especially with trying to identify positions in athletics and pro sports for African Americans, that I almost feel like social justice issues are something that has to be worked on very, very hard and often, because that will also be something that will, I think, aid you in helping to actually move and put those people in those positions. Because now we're not only we're dealing with social justice on a basic platform, but now you're also dealing with social justice in the way of trying to change the mindsets of people who think a certain way, and the reason why they've never really looked at African Americans to put them in certain positions, if that makes sense.
And everybody should be able to dream and have an opportunity to fail. That's America. That's the American dream. Okay, right. I can be whatever I want to be, as long as I, have my education, I have my experience. I can be whatever I want to be, and I have the opportunity to fail. That's what everybody. So who am I to tell someone that they can't do something, or who am I if somebody comes to me for help, to not help them, if I can, or even if I can't help them, point them in the right direction, give them some advice, whatever, and go from, and keep in touch with them. Like, that's Correct. Just basic fundamentals of being a person.
Yes. So. Yes. Well, it has definitely been a pleasure to have you on, and I'm going to be rooting for you to accomplish the things that you've set out to do. Please follow up and let us know what you have going on and all of your success stories, because it would definitely be a pleasure to hear, especially considering the times that we're in. So any movement and achievement is definitely worth the celebration. So thank you so much for coming and chatting with me.
Awesome, and thank you for having me.
Absolutely. All right. Ciao.
Thanks for joining us this week on What Are You Sporting About podcast. Make sure to visit our website, prosportlawyer.com, where you can subscribe to the show in iTunes, Stitcher, or whatever your favorite platform is, so you'll never miss a show. And while you're at it, if you found value in the show, we'd appreciate a rating on iTunes or iHeartRadio. Or if you'd simply tell a friend about the show, that would help us out too. If you like the show, you might want to check out our book, What Are You Sporting About? Attorney Savania DeBarros is available for private consulting at sldebarros.com. And remember, we're here to educate, support, and guide you in your journey to success, because we're all sporting about something.